Hello, I'm Dr. Tina Cannon from Chattanooga State Community College, and in this clip I want to show you how to use the calculator to find the measures of variation. In this we'll find the range, the variance, and the standard deviation. I want to use a course compass, and we will use a handout that's located in Calculator Instruction, Unit 1. And the descriptive statistics handout, we use that for measures of center, but we're also going to use it for this section. Now, in this particular problem, it's still using the weights of baseball players, the pitchers of the Atlanta Braves ball team, and we use this in some of the previous video clips, so you can look back. But in this, we want to place our values into our list, so you push Stat, push Enter, and you type your values into the calculator. So at this point, if you do not have those values in your calculator, then you can pause this video and type the values in. Now, I have the steps for this, working with these. Notice you enter your values in list 1. We're always going to try to put them in list 1 if at all possible. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to calculate our descriptive statistics for measures of variation. And the way you do this is push Stat, the statistics button, move over to Calculate. We are still dealing with one set of variables, so we're going to push one variable stat, so that's highlighted, so I'm just going to push Enter, but I've got to push Enter again. And now we have these values. Now in previous videos we've discussed the mean and the median and the mode and the mid-range using the calculator. Well, now in this section we want to talk about finding the range, the variance, and the standard deviation. Now, the formula for range is your maximum minus your minimum. And our calculator, if we scroll down, remember if this is flashing, there's other values down here. So to find the range of values, it is from your highest value to your lowest value. So if I want to find the range, I'm going to subtract my maximum minus my minimum. So the range will have 230 minus 170. So the weights of the baseball players range about 60 pounds is what they're trying to get us to see. Okay, another measurement is your variance. And I'm going to push Stat, move over to Calculate, push Enter twice. Okay, so I have my values. Now, the variance is the standard deviation squared. And let me go ahead and tell you, if they ask you to find the standard deviation, that is the one that says S of X. The reason is this is a sample standard deviation. So right now, if they ask us to find standard deviation, we could write down 19.9. That's the amount of deviation among the weights of these ball players, which that's quite a bit. That's a pretty large number for the for your standard deviation. But what they're going to ask us to do also is find the variance. Well, the variance is the standard deviation squared. And your calculator, instead of you having to type in 19.91323169, you remember the number continues on, and we can't see a lot of times the rest of the number because it's rounded. Well, if we want to be accurate, what happens is we can locate the variables that's used on this list by pushing the variables button, VARS. So if I push VARS, notice number 5 says statistics, so I can push number 5. And we can see some of the values that were located on that list. Well, we need the S of X because that's the standard deviation of the sample. So number 3, I'm just going to push the number 3. Now remember, variance is this squared. So I can push the square button, which is located above log. So push the square button, push Enter, and there is your variance. Now notice, if I take the square root of that number, it should give me back what I started with for the standard deviation, because the variance is the square of the standard deviation, and the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So we're going to do a problem using this. I'm going to call up this problem. This is out of your book or out of your homework. This is from section 3.3 in your book, and it gives us some values, and what it asks us to do in this, it says statistics students participate in an experiment to test their ability to determine when 1 minute or 60 seconds has passed. That's without looking at your watch, of course. The results are given below in seconds. Now, it says find the range, the variance, and standard deviation for the given sample. Identify one reason why the standard deviation for this sample might not be a good estimate of the standard deviation for the population. Okay, so first of all, it asks us to find the range. Well, we're going to take our calculator, and I'm going to push STAT, push enter. Now I'm going to move this set of values because I use this in some other examples. So I'm going to move list 1 to another list. I'm going to move over to, say, list 4. Now you do not have to do this unless you want to, but I'm going to move up on top of L4, and I'm going to put L1 in there. So I'm going to put second and the number 1 and push enter. And now I've placed that there, and I can go clear this one and use it. So I'm going to move on top of L1, push clear, and enter. Okay, so I'm going to type in my values. I have 53, 52, 61, 68, and 49. Okay, so I have one list of values or variables, so I'm going to push stat, move over to calculate, push enter twice. Okay, so now what happens is it asks me to find the range. Now remember your formula. The range is the high minus the low. So my maximum is 68 and my minimum is 49. So 68 minus 49. So my range comes out to be 20. So I'm going to place 20 in the value in the box, and I'm going to check it, and it says sorry, that's not correct. So let's go back to our calculator and make sure I typed in everything correct. I have 53, 52, 61, 68, 49. So my range is the high value minus the low. So my high value in my list was what, 68, and my low is 49. So second quit, 68 minus 49. I get 19. Oh, I made a mistake. So let's go back and push this again, make sure I didn't do. And sometimes this happens. You have to double check yourself and see what's happening. I think I'm typed in a number wrong. Let's see if that's what it is. Yeah, 68 minus 49. I guess you can watch the video and see what I just did wrong. Minus 49. I think I put 69 minus 49. Okay, so that's better. And things do happen, so just fix it. Okay, there we go. That's better. Okay, next, it asks you to find the sample variance. Now, notice how it's your measurements on the range were in seconds. Okay, your sample variance is in seconds squared. So that's why variance is not used as much as standard deviation, because we want it to be the accurate measurement, and right now the measurements are squared, just like when you're dealing with area and perimeter. Perimeter, your measurements are just like what you're using, but your area is in your measurement square. So that's why sample variance, they will take the square root of that and get the standard deviation, and that's normally the one we use the most. But to get the variance, let's see, let's go back and let's calculate the standard deviation first. Push enter twice. Okay, so my standard deviation is this. Now you could type all that in and push squared, or we can push variables, go down to number 5, pick number 3, and square it. So my variance ends up 60.3. It says round to the nearest tenth. So 60.3. There's my variance. Now my standard deviation is what we have on the screen. My standard deviation is this, and it says round to the nearest tenth. pay attention to how they ask you to round. So the nearest tenth will be 7.8. 7.8. Okay, check that. You did a good job. Okay, so we have this. And notice, though, at the bottom it says continue, because it's going to ask you a question. Now I want you to notice your sample standard deviation 7.8. But I want you to think about how big of a sample we have here. We only ask, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We only ask 5 students to do this, okay? Now they ask you a question. Identify one reason why the standard deviation for this sample might not be a good estimate for the standard deviation of the population of adults. Okay, think about what the problem would be. So let's read through our choices. The standard deviation might not be a good estimate because the sample is very small. That is very true. Okay, the standard deviation might be a good estimate because there is most likely an outlier in the data. Outlier means a number that's far away from the other value, so no, that's not true. Notice the standard deviation might not be a good estimate because standard deviation is too large. No, the standard deviation is not large. It's within 7 seconds, 7 to 8 seconds of guessing a minute. And then the next one says standard deviation might not be a good estimate because the data are from a random sample. Well, if you look at the top, let's see, does it say it's from a random sample? I don't see that. Okay, but the main reason this is not accurate is because the sample size. It is way too small. So we're going to select A and check our answer. So be sure to read through these and try to think through each one of them. So that's an example of where you can calculate your measures of variation using your calculator.